Konnichiwa, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and greetings everyone. My name is Dr. Zuhasni bin Abdul Rahim from SIRI, and I will be your host and organizer for this event. We are happy to welcome you to this program, and we hope that you will be benefited from this program coming from plenary speaker, keynote speaker, and also other researchers that are sharing their work and knowledge. We also hope that you become a winner for most of the competition that have been offered in this program, such as Best Paper Award, Best Presenter Award, and Best Impact Award. I would like to wish you all the best and welcome to Industry 4.0 Regional Conference 2020.
It is with great pleasure we welcome Yang Berbahagia Datuk Seri Wong Siew Hai, Chairman of MAEI, Malaysian American Electronics Industry, and Champion of the E&E Productivity Nexus, EEPN, for his welcoming remarks.
Thank you. Dato' Wei Chuan Beng, Champion of Digital Nexus, Dr. Thomas Uy, Chair of the Industry 4.0 of E&E Productivity Nexus, and Product Marketing Manager of Intel. Conference Track Chairs, Prof. Dr. Hui, USMAI and Computer Science, Prof. Rosni, USM Engineering and Technology, Prof. Ali, UTM. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to everyone. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this two-day Industrial 4.0 Regional Conference 2020, which is proudly organized by MPC in collaboration with the E&E Productivity Nexus and UTM SIRI. E&E Productivity Nexus is one of the 9 productivity nexus under the Malaysia Productivity Blueprint. The blueprint aims to raise the country's E&E productivity to greater heights and continue to be competitively globally. The theme of today's conference is synchronizing AI, engineering, and economy towards Industry 4.0. The conference program is specially structured to target researchers from both academia and industry, including professors, lecturers, and university students. There will be 3 conference tracks conducted concurrently in 3 different WebEx sessions, which will be co-chaired by UT and USM separately. The organizers have received many conference papers, and the track chairs have been very busy selecting and shortlisting the most suitable papers to be presented today. I'm sure the participants will find these papers to be very informative and useful in your own research and studies. I understand there will be many attractive awards to be won, including 1 Best Impact Award, 3 Best Presenter Awards, and 9 Best Paper Awards. So please stay through till the end. for the next 2 days and remember to vote for your best paper. In addition to the conference papers, the organizers have also arranged for regionally renowned keynote speakers and plenary speakers to share their knowledge and insights. This pandemic has indeed created a new normal for both the consumers as well as the business enterprises. Many companies have started to rethink their business models, re-strategize their factory operations, and also to redefine their supply chain. I sincerely hope that the sharing and insights from today's conference will spur more interest in Industry 4.0 research and adoption by academia and businesses. The crisis has spurred businesses to transform their processes and identify new ways of enhancing productivity, which is crucial for their survival. Our ability to sustain our current level of competitiveness is being challenged, and whatever initiatives undertaken to overcome these challenges will be the turning point to revive and transform the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned earlier, today's conference focuses on the convergency of computer science, engineering, and the economics of business towards Industry 4.0. The current situation has forced all parties to come together and synergize and to make Industry 4.0 our nation's competitive advantage. I urge all participants not to let the crisis go to waste, and together we can transform and be successful in this new normal. I would like to applaud the organizers of today's event who have painstakingly planned everything to the finest details to ensure the proceedings of this conference will be flawless over an online platform. We are indeed entering a new normal. With this, I would like to congratulate MPC and its partners in organizing today's regional conference. I wish you all a productive 2-day conference and hope that sharing will benefit all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Datuk Sri Wong Siew Hai. For now, I would like to invite Datuk Sri Wei Chuan Beng, the champion of Digital Productivity Nexus, to present his opening remark. Thank you.
Well, thank you, the MC, for this announcement. And good morning, everyone. Dr. Sri Wong Siew Hai, champion of Electrical and Electronic Productivity Nexus. Dr. Thomas Ooi, Product Marketing and Engineering Manager of Intel, and also the Electrical and Electronic Productivity Nexus KS3 Chair, the 3 conference track chairs, Business and Operation Impact, Professor Dr. Hui of USM, AI and Computer Science, Professor Dr. Rosni from USM, Engineering and Technology, Professor Dr. Ali Slamat of UTM, MGIT. So it looks like there are a number of a mixture of some old friends and also some new acquaintance. And I'm sure the participants today will benefit greatly from a lot of content and papers that will be presented. So as opening keynote speaker, I would like to just break important news. That is, first of all, the world is not going to be the same anymore. The world that we used to know, because of what is happening in the recent months. Actually, it just happened in the last quarter or so. It's in a form of a very disruptive, analogous to the kind of volcano eruption. And I just like to bring this big picture first before talking about some of the ideas about the IR 4.0. Essentially, if you look at the past, the world has been operating in certain manner, which is a globalized world. of which the supply chain on the left there, you find that world is flat according to Tom Friedman, and then the suppliers can come from anywhere, the customer can be anywhere, and they will take advantage of the lowest cost and therefore be able to mobilize whatever that kind of the best configuration in terms of the supply, where it adds value and reduce costs, and then finally reach the final consumer. And because of that, it has given rise to the specialization. So Malaysia, likewise, has been able to choose to specialize in some areas of which we have been having some advantages, such as cost. And we know that cost alone is not necessarily sustainable. And then, of course, the world continues to be very dynamic, and we have been holding this position as we try to creep up the value chain. However, we still operate in that world is flat format. However, in the last 1 year, the intensity of the trade war, particularly between the US and China, and of late, the last 6 months, the allies has also jumped in to kind of be more conscious about the alignment in terms of how to actually put the trade war, escalate that to the next level. So it is actually a very real situation, because we have seen very major shift of the industries, some of them out of China, some of them embracing China, and in preparation of realignment with either some of the market or some of the geographical advantages that they may have. And of course, ASEAN has been a great beneficiary of that reconfiguration due to the trade war. However, when the pandemic hit, suddenly that breaks the supply chain. That also created an unprecedented economic crisis. Talk about loss of jobs, lost incomes, and a lot of companies are kind of fighting for survival. And no country and no government in the world will be able to do enough in order to assist corporations, businesses, and people to totally overcome this crisis without being affected. And it's highly are actually affected in a more adverse manner, while some are beneficiaries. So as a result of that, we also notice that the different geographical region begin to rethink about how they play a part in the global supply chain. And that has resulted in this idea of reconfiguration and redistribution. And first of all, what is looming and not obvious yet right now is about food crisis. The breaks in the supply chain, and also because of the uneven distribution of food production, combined with some of the severe impact of production in some areas, Africa, now India, some part of the Middle East, due to locust activities. People have, in some countries, have actually started that kind of action in terms of making the country self-sufficient. In fact, you can also hear that in US, bringing the manufacturing onshore again, it is also a major effort towards self-sufficiency. And in order to do that, the world could no longer operate like getting some cheaper supply from anywhere else in the world. So chances is that there is a need to start anew. And there is a fresh start in many of those industries. And therefore, it has given rise to the opportunity to automate, to digitalize. And of course, IR 4.0 as a revolution would actually come in very handy. And many of the initiatives around the world, likewise, I think in this region, has been very much government-led, government encouraged, government supported. So if you look at on the right here, post-2020, it is likely that we have to organize ourselves more as a region. rather than as a very much part of a big global player, simply because the region will tend to rise to become more important market partners, suppliers than ever. Then let's look at what digital productivity nexus, as well as working together with electrical and electronic productivity nexus, we envision something of a common purpose here, which is actually not only to bring productivity increase to our members who are from the industry, which is the digital industry, as well as EE industry. We would certainly see that digital IR and IR 4.0 will play the center stage. So with that, for this year, Digital Productivity Nexus is starting this major campaign, essentially to impact the leadership level. Leadership, not just about government leadership, it is also leadership across the entire industry. And if you imagine that tens of thousands of companies in the EE sectors and tens of thousands companies in any industries, and combine, there are hundreds of thousands of those businesses. And each of those businesses will have its leader. And likewise, in the government, each of the ministry, each of the department will have their respective leaders. We would like to bring this a very strong sense of awareness to the leaders that we have no choice as a country and as our industry. We need to go big with digital, go big with IR 4.0, because IR 4.0 is the core part of digital. So big here, it is actually made up of 3 letters, BIG. And the first letter is 2. And when we start thinking about how do we re-examine our business strategy, we often want to look at, on one hand, to sustain. That means it should not decline. On the other hand, it should increase by increasing growth, increasing productivity. And we do need to think differently, because it is not just about incremental, it's not just about gradual. It has to also require us to think about how to have a breakthrough, of which is like 10x, 100x of improvement. When we are able to put IR 4.0 and digital in a center stage, 10x, 100x suddenly becomes very possible. There are many examples I'm sure we can learn from many of the learned presenters in the subsequent sessions. The second part is this. These days, people are also going to place trust, as far as customers are concerned, place trust on companies that can deliver quality, consistency, to give that kind of very transparent and also dependable, reliable services. So the integrity in terms of consistency and traceability could be achieved with IR 4.0 and also digital technology. So therefore, it will give rise to exceptional quality as well as the customer loyalty, of which is very much needed post COVID-19. And the third letter is good. Quite often when we think about digital IR 4.0, people think about revolution. And a lot of companies will be out of businesses because they couldn't compete. Yes, revolution actually denotes such a picture. At the same time, as a leader, we need to face the abundance thinking. There are abundance of opportunities for all stakeholders when we embrace digital IR 4.0. And it helps the environment, the supply chain, employees, shareholders, and customers. So that thinking of being good, technology is good, IR 4.0 is good, it is going to be one that gives us the motivation, the positive thinking to move forward. Not going to talk much about it today, but I think everyone who attend the session today would already know where we are today, where the world begin to embrace IR 4.0 is not by chance. It is the stage of which it is due to the development of the entire baskets of different technology, ranging from space, AR, VR. I would like to envision that the next or the future IR 4.0 regional conference will be done in a form of our own avatar entering a conference room, which is a virtual, that we can see everyone seated us, and also be it stage or be it any of those background that will actually come alive in the VR and IR setting. It is definitely possible, and therefore, if we could challenge or motivate the organizers to think about this possibility in the next version of the IR 4.0 regional conference. And all the rest of technology that we could see on the list here, nanotech, of course, cloud computing, IoT, geoengineering, blockchain, all kind of capturing of energy storage and transmission, biotech, AI, robotics, advanced materials, 3D printing. This basket of technology has to be part and parcel of our life, because that yields breakthrough productivity, eliminate inefficiency and wastage. So while we at a high level will look at, on one hand, to make improvement, breakthrough improvement, on the other hand is to minimize mistakes and wastage that could be worth trillions. I think this is where the purpose of this conference is to dwell into greater details of these two specific areas. This current crisis also speed up the adoption of IR 4.0. We already can see that working from home, and suddenly we find that I have been talking to the providers of the 5G technology. The 5G technology, while it has been very much talked about, and people say it has been very much hyped about, it is going to play a center stage in the IR 4.0 implementation. And they were struggling to find the killer application. And suddenly they find out, hey, working from home, it is a very simple so-called implementation that every one of us here have become accustomed to, will become the killer application, or one of those, with the adoption of a 5G digital workspace. In terms of the discovery of vaccine and other diagnostic kits, the use of the various new biotech platform has actually speed up. So that's why we see that there are all kind of new methods coming on board very quickly. Low touch economy, e-payment, wallets, all the ordering, all the whatever online, be it food delivery and so forth, very low touch. And of course, contact tracing technology. These are all part and parcel of what IR 4.0 can bring. Rapid production of the PPE, anything from the protection gears to gown, deployment of IR 4.0 technology there. So it looks like we either will see this crisis to be one that is bringing disaster, or the crisis is the one loss of opportunities. We must not waste this crisis and turn that into opportunity. Lastly, I just want to highlight this point that if we are getting ourselves ready, there are some of those things that we have direct control, some of those things that we also need to provide the input to the government and so forth. Inherently, in any organization, skill sets and mindsets will have to be key. there are this day a lot of programs that are helping us, like UTM and many other institutions are gearing up to expand that provision of the trainings and degree courses, master courses for the skill sets and also the mindsets, competencies development to adopt IR 4.0. And the leadership, at the leadership level, management level, we need to have a strategy, short term, mid term, and long term. At the while we can see that government has been very forthcoming, and there is a need to also continuously put in place agile regulations. And what is important is to put in some kind of righteous policies to prevent the exacerbation of the inequality gap. And when things are interconnected, cybersecurity becomes an important safeguard for the industry and for us. So this is mushrooming everywhere. I think we need to develop more skills and knowledge in order to embrace cybersecurity. So I think lastly, in search of the new positioning for Malaysia, or more self-sufficient, we also need to strengthen our capabilities and also strengthen our critical dependencies. Our dependencies on agile regulation. We also are in the process of building very pervasive and robust connectivity. We are seeing digital transformation in all sectors. That means consumers and all other B2B so-called customers of E&E, as well as digital productivity nexus, as well as all the research and academic institutions will actually participate actively in this transformation. With that direction, it is obvious that the new wealth creation will see the need to embrace IR 4.0, and that businesses are digitally enabled. And then we will have to look at our outlook. Of course, some of our companies are direct foreign investment, of which, let's say, we are part of a UK company or US company or German company. We may serve the need of that particular companies. And beyond that, I think many other companies will have to relook at where they serve as the market, either US or ASEAN. But I like to kind of suggest for us to relook at how to search for our real niche in the region. And finally, our new position for Malaysia, especially adopting IR 4.0, if it can be the heart of ASEAN. And we put the word there, Cek Jabah, which is China, India, Korea, Japan, and Bangladesh, because we are actually in the so-called heart of this Cek Jabah, apart from ASEAN. So harmonizing with our neighbors, the economy and culture, I think is one important area for us to do in order to get into the market. We also like to encourage more and support more entrepreneurial ventures, because a lot of these new frontiers require the very resourceful individuals to go out there and open new market. And what we do with IR 4.0, there is need to advance the livelihood of people, make livelihood better for people. So if we can begin to put more of such thoughts, it will certainly help, because advancing the livelihood could be in education, could be in healthcare, it could be in so many areas, be it transportation, F&B, so many areas. Reconfiguring the supply chain to be ASEAN oriented, and Malaysia to champion the whole product manufacturing. We have been good in component manufacturing. We do have some pretty better developed supply chain. It's high time that we can think about, if we can think about whole product that can serve the community. Lastly, with all these, our research institute and universities around, I would like to advocate that technological leadership in applied engineering. I think the research part of it can certainly continue. It is more for longer term, but there is an acute need for the applied engineering where we use whatever component technologies out there and turn into something useful for our own country, our own industry in this region. All right. So I think with that, I would like to wish this conference to be hugely successful, that everyone could benefit from it. And with that, our industry and country could smoothly be transformed with IR 4.0. Thank you. And back to you, moderator.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you to Wei Chuan Beng, the champion of digital productivity nexus. I would like to add something. The quotes from the Professor Robert J. Schiller, the 2013 Nobel laureate in economics, professor of economics, Yale University. You cannot wait until a house burned down to buy fire insurance on it. We cannot wait until there are massive dislocation in our society to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution. So I would like to invite our next keynote speaker, Dr. Koh Su Beng, with the title Innovate the Thrive with Industry 4.0. Thank you.
Hi everyone, can you see me and hear me well? Okay, can everyone see my slides? Loud and clear, thank you. Right, foremost, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting me to share my experience at this prestigious conference. My title that I'm going to share is along the lines of Innovate and Thrive with Industry 4.0. As I understand, this is Industry 4.0 conference. And without much further ado, let me continue in the interest of time. Right. So I think for today, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share three things. Industry 4.0, demystifying innovation, which means that viewing from the lens of innovation, and learning the number one skills for 2022, which is innovation. Right? Let's proceed. Dr. Wei has did a good job, in explaining the new normal, whereby, everything, low touch economy, social distancing, and digital as an enabler. Whether you live, you work, you do your businesses. Without digital, there's nothing at all for today, right? So one of the things that I learned is actually, at the last point, which is innovate or dissipate. So this is where the key to progress, particularly in this disruptive time or crisis moment, is innovation. Number two is actually the trend. The mega trend number two is actually, again, Dr. Wei has actually went through all the full 9 yards and explained how things are, because where we are today in terms of the fourth industrial revolution is actually we have a lot of technology has been incubated, has been working in progress, from nanotech, biotech, cognotech, cognition. That's where AI comes about, and then ICT and engineering, right? That's where IoT, the 5G, and all those. So with all this thing, we are now at the march up. All these 30 years plus of advancement suddenly converge together into this fourth industrial revolution. So I can see that, there's a lot of disruption. There's no time for us to understand a lot of things. That's where collaboration is key, because it takes time to learn and master the skills. So as I know from my own experience, Industry 4.0 is not the same as the fourth industrial revolution. Personally, I would think of Industry 4.0 as a subset of the fourth industrial revolution, and here is why. The emerging technology, whether it's IoT, AI, cybersecurity, they are just technology enabler. So with this technology enabler, where you apply it is important. You apply in agriculture, you have a smart farming. You apply in fintech, financial area, you got fintech, healthcare, you have digital health. And today we are talking about applying in the industrial environment. That's where Industry 4.0, or sometimes known as smart manufacturing, comes about. So the key here is actually we still need talent, because without the talent, there's nothing to talk about, because we need to build the base, we need to build the capacity. After that, we can deploy it to whichever area that we want it to be. So this leads back to the very key thing about the national policy for Industry 4.0 called Industry Forward, which was launched in 2018 October, right? So with this, I think they listed out 11 key technology pillars. Those are great. And then you can do a QR scan, that particular QR code, it will bring you to that document. It's a brilliantly written document, right? So anything that you need to know about all these key enablers is all spelled out very nicely over there. Now, we start to have many institutions, organizations start to really work towards building capacity on that. So I'd like to draw this attention, drawing parallels to an orchestra. We know that most of us are famous with orchestra. You got strings, you got woodwinds, flute, and so on. So imagine we are building IoT expert, we are building virtual reality expert, data scientists, cybersecurity, AI, and so on. But all these people don't work in silo. That's the thing, because, for example, IoT actually brings the data right into the cloud. So IoT fuels big data. Big data fuels AI, because without big data, without lots of data, the AI model doesn't work very well. So what you need is actually a maestro. Do we have a maestro? Because what are we trying to achieve here? Because at the end of the day, in the big one, I mean the sharing by Dr. Wei, big is good because it actually focuses you into the breakthrough, right? It's a growth. So you need a maestro. Do you have the maestro identified in the Industry 4.0 innovation projects of yours? Because that's a key question. Why are we doing what we are doing? Because the purpose has to be there. Otherwise, you'll be just learning AI. You try to apply it in a very theoretical and academic way, and so on and so forth. I guess you get the drift. So with this, I think I always, since I'm born and bred in Penang, I've seen how Penang lost the Freeport, transition ourselves into the electronics semiconductor manufacturing, and now into design. So I like to review it as one industry, two parallel worlds, because a lot of us, if you work in MNC, multinationals, everything is exactly like US, because you walk into the Intel campus or any one of those companies' campuses, they are similar to whatever they have in US, right? It's like advanced world. So what they have is actually their ERP probably is already in Oracle, SAP, the MES system, the Rockwell Factory Talks, the Lumina, and so on and so forth. And they have this paperless digitalization, well, maybe 2 decades ago. And production line, they are more along the lines of going towards the digital twins now, right? So they are actually having all these cool state-of-the-art systems. Perhaps many of them already living this as a daily life. Now, multinational, when they operate in Malaysia, who do they buy from? They probably bought from SME. So in this example, I just put 3 suppliers, but most of you will know they actually have thousands, right, of suppliers. Now, level 1 is actually the first level of the Malaysian SME who supply to the multinational. This level 1 suppliers buy from the level 2 suppliers, and level 3 and level 4, and so on and so forth. That's how a multinational operations can actually benefit the ecosystems. Now, I'm moving towards the other end of the spectrum. If you reach down to maybe level 4, work with them, you understand that the ERP system is actually Excel spreadsheet. The MES, Excel spreadsheet. Quality data monitoring collection, maybe manually record down and then transfer to Excel, right? And you got the drift. Production lines is not a production assembly line, maybe an automated machine and conveyor belts. So those are rooms, right, for improvement. So when we look at the Industry 4.0, where are we targeting? What if we think innovatively? Let's say that every MNCs was just to adopt 2% of its level 1 supplier, and the level 1 supplier adopt the level 2 supplier. Every one of them just adopt 2%, because if you want to do change management, doing things 100% totally different, it's not going to work very well. But asking people to do just 2% of additional things, maybe they'll do it. And that's where, perhaps there's something for thoughts. The reason why I mentioned the parallels is like, this is actually a public domain information. You can actually QR scan the QR code. And, in 2002, today is 2020, it was 2002, Motorola actually have these systems. They digitize the whole Six Sigma into a process, a software, which today is, we're still talking about machine monitoring and so on and so forth, but they already aggregated all this information and it's available, right? So this is where the multinational is ahead of the curve, or maybe it's already living there. So these are the public domain information that you can find. But again, the parallels goes deeper than that, because if this thing were not published, nobody knows about all this work, right? So that is another thing that the parallels comes about. With this introduction, let me drill down into innovation. Let's demystify innovation, because I spent almost 30 years of my career working on innovation. To me, it's just creating something valuable out of an idea that is new to you or your organization. So with that simple definition, why is innovation matters? Well, I think 50% of the world GDP is driven by innovation, and then customer wants to buy from innovative companies, as well as people are more loyal to innovators, right? Because employees most likely would like to apply to work with a company. So Magnus and myself, actually, we wrote an IEEE paper. I can QR scan that QR code again. We already know that from our findings and research, innovative companies, they are more resilient, especially at the crisis situation. If we look at now, even COVID-19, Apple, Tesla, and all shares continue to go up, right? It's like not feeling anything. Zoom, for example, it's like if you went into Zoom, you invested in Zoom like 6 months ago, now you already make almost 200%, right? So those are the things that innovation is key. Another thing about innovation is the most difficult one to copy if it's along the lines of DNA and culture of the organization. Because for product, you can buy a product, reverse engineer it, you probably will know how to figure out. Malaysia actually has a very good mindset, because since this actually again press release back in 2004, they know that in order for innovation to work, it cannot be a flavor of the month or flavor of the year. It has to be integrated as a habit or a lifestyle. But how many of us do that, right? So now it goes back to the question about all those IoT, AI, and all those. Are we working on capacity building or innovating? Because if we work too differently, right? If capacity building is more churning out more data scientists, more AI specialists, and to do what? Because it's just maybe provide jobs, but we still need jobs. But I think that we need to go beyond that, creating something valuable for Malaysia, because this is key. So why I say that? Because frankly speaking, we need to draw a line between creativity, invention, and innovation. I'm actually talking about the last column, which is innovation. Innovation is about ideas to cash, right? Invention is about cash to idea. That's why you need to patent it, and it's all investment into it. We, unfortunately, in the E&E world and all the industrial world, creativity alone doesn't cut it. Unless you are artists, you are creative, you can sell your product straight away, right? A drawing or maybe a piece of music. So those are that category of people. We unfortunately don't belong to that, because we have to work hard and put about 3,000 ideas to get a winning commercializable ideas, right? Product. So the journey is long and also not for the faint-hearted. I'd like to introduce you to this S-curve and tree horizon. Many of you actually professors, I know that you're very learned, you know what is S-curve. And here's just a brief view. I use it as a three S-curve marked as horizon 1, horizon 2, and horizon 3. So if you look at this horizon 1, 2, and 3, it starts out with invention, because everything starts with invention first, right? Your ideas go into invention, and then subsequently it goes into innovation, right? So for simplicity and ease of understanding, right, we can view the Kodak. Kodak very good in their film, right? They can have still a lot of innovation. They can have ASA 100, 400, 1006, you got the drift. They continue to innovate. But the thing is that they forgot to reinvent. In fact, I think they did. They created the first digital camera back in 1973. So they reinvented. The invention during that time was actually a digital camera, which looks like this, right? Unfortunately, it didn't take off. And in innovation, size doesn't matter. No, the moment you miss the curve, then that's it. So innovation comes about, digital camera comes about, right? So now you notice that what are they going to be disrupted? Well, they're going to be disrupted by handphone camera. So this is exactly, the latest casualty is Olympus. They are gone under. So this is how innovation is all about. We need to jump the next S curve. So the opportunity comes now because with this industry 4.0, it's for you to jump, right? So you can see from film to the digital camera, the phone camera, and you probably will see that the dial-up modem days, to broadband. Today, you ask anyone to go back to dial-up, there's no way they can go back. So that's where 5G is where the next horizon is, and that's how things evolve. And the thing is that digitization, right? We go into automation, we go into AI, and these are how the S-curve works. Now, going back to here, when you do this in horizon 1, usually what you're doing is innovating for profitability. If you do it for horizon 2, which is about 20% of your portfolio, it's about growth. And I like that the first B in big is actually 10x improvement, which is you want to have a breakthrough, right? And horizon 3, that is about 10%. So whatever that is so far away will come to you eventually. Perhaps AI is actually at that level, right? So where are you in terms of the industry 4.0, right? In terms of H1, H2, and H3, you know this yourself because every organization, every individual, they are different. That's why it makes it so complex, right? With here, since this is actually a house full of researchers, I'd like to draw this. This is actually a slide that I borrowed from the IAOIP Certified Professional Innovator Bootcamp. Now, we always hear these hackathons, right? We run hackathons and all those, right? IoT, smart farming, smart city. They're actually working at the bottom here, right? They are derivatives, right? So which means that you probably use like maybe IoT applications. You want to do machine monitoring or smart farming. You use some kind of IoT platform, maybe coming from Favorite or IBM or Microsoft Azure, right? And then if you are researchers, probably you think that maybe perpetual IoT nodes, like self-powered nodes, right? So those are the research. So on the top one, actually is very fundamental and it's very rare, usually government-funded projects, right? But the bottom here is actually where things are happening. So along the lines, all the organizations still do the horizontal example, right? I know Dr. Maslan is here. He has his favorite platform of IoT. He will still continue to do his R&D, right? That's how he does it. But he provides a platform for technopreneur at the bottom here to continuously do whatever solution that you want based on the IoT platform, right? Now, here's the trick. When you work at the lower level, it's actually very easily copied. Today you have Uber, tomorrow you have a Grab, My Taxi, Muda, and all those will come up because easily copied. So what is your game plan, right? It will quickly become the red ocean where you differentiate by the price, right? So the top one is high risk, high return. And we know that 97% of the patent file didn't justify for its filing and the costing. So those are things that the game that we have to choose, right? So this is about innovation. It's highly complex. And when you do an application here, the technopreneur will know that after you run, you have to run fast because it eventually becomes a red ocean, right? So the next thing is actually how, since you see this from Industry 4.0, the innovation part, the next thing is, if you're ready, here's how it goes, right? We can use some tools, but don't leave it to serendipity. Serendipity means that, always is here the information about or sharing about, or 3M, the failure becomes success of a post-it notes. Those days were gone, right? Don't dream about that anymore. There's actually a science and tools and process in innovation. Rather than using a tools of 1980s, you can use a tools of year 2020s, because tools evolve, right? If you want to innovate, the first thing to do is don't always challenge your status quo. Don't get very complacent with what you have. Dream and envision how solutions can be better. You must have a growth mindset, must be curious, right? You can read the book by Carol Dweck as a very good example of the growth mindset. And emerging trends, you need to be aware of all the emerging trends, right? People is going into like sustainable innovation, sustainable lifestyle, gig economy, and domain insight. I can't innovate something for healthcare if I have no domain insight, right? So these are the things that you need to know as an innovator. And lastly, this is where everyone gets excited, because AI, 5G, IoT. But we know that in innovation, that's just playing a very small role, right? But it's critical, right? Because that is where the S-curve drives you. So once you do this, you have to work under the radar. If you know that someone announced to you that, hey, I work on these innovation projects, you know it's not real, because innovation, before you launch, you actually have to be very tight-lipped, very, very secretive. And we always know, we sometimes hear news, unfortunately, that if the engineer lost a prototype, they even commit suicide, because that's how critical it is. Then you surface under the radar, launch a new product, innovation, and the journey between from the left until the launch, you all have to invest time, money, resources to it before it goes into innovation. And hopefully you did your market research right, and you scale to the market, and that's where you get your money back. That is the game, right? So if you want to play this game, that funnel itself, I know that many of you guys may be already using design thinking. Design thinking and agile is probably now the norm now, right? So another thing that I can introduce to you is actually another methodology called 6I. This is where it demarcates out every single, because as you travel this particular innovation journey, you know that sometimes there are people, they are just very curious, they always have lots of ideas, they're very creative, but they're not really an implementer, right? So most of the time for organizations who venture into design thinking, they already have a set of standard machines or a factory to churn out product consistently, which means that they have product, they know how to invest in the project, they know how to prioritize, and then run the project management, launch a product. Maybe, if they want to run 100 programs per day, per year, they can actually launch it successfully, on time, on schedule, on cost, right? 99% of the time. But here, I've seen clients, right, whereby in the ideation journey, right, they actually have a lot of ideas. So the boss thought that this guy actually is passionate about the idea, give the person to implement it. That's where a drag, because that guy just want to have idea, but doesn't really know the material for this particular implementer. So these actually are some profiles. All of us actually needed, because innovation is a team sport. It's no longer like Thomas Edison's day, where one person can be in the lab, bury your head under, and then work on it. So now goes back to this particular one. You notice this, right? In 2018, World Economic Forum published this. Analytical thinking and innovation is a top skill. So everyone who are actually listening in, you can actually try to educate your students to do this, because frankly speaking, this is a key thing to do to defend us, to move forward. So another thing about this is actually there's a science of innovation involved, right? So in fact, the science of innovation is governed by this body called IAOIP. They're ISO certified, the only ISO compliant innovation certification body. And for those who are actually in organization, you know that there's actually a ISO guidance standard, ISO 56000. You can Google that. That's actually been formed, and I'm actually part of the team doing that in the background, right? So Malaysian chapter is being formed, and that's how I will encourage you to pay attention to that area. Another thing why innovation is actually very scarce in Malaysia is because it's an experiential learning process. The thing is actually like riding a bicycle. You cannot learn how to ride a bicycle by attending lecture, attending training and all those, right? Google from the internet. You need to ride the bicycle yourself. And perhaps a safe riding track will be good rather than if you fall, you fall into the oncoming traffic. That's ugly, right? So in a nutshell, if you want to transform from business today to business tomorrow through the lens of innovation and Industry 4.0 transformation program, there's a change. We need to know what are your strategy to embrace the Industry 4.0, right? Benchmark industry best practices, and more importantly, understand the purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? The maestro, right? Then you can actually do your strategic project and based on the Industry 4.0 trained workforce. So the key here is just like medical report and all this. My healthcare report will be different from yours. Everyone is unique. What works for one person may not work for you. Don't imitate. Know yourself, master the skill, and take actions that are relevant to you. In closing, Industry 4.0, I hope that you can see the argument why I think that Industrial Revolution is bigger than Industry 4.0 and manufacturing R&D. Despite many people think that manufacturing is not sexy, but without knowing how to do manufacturing, you got no way to design. It's just like architect can draw whatever nice architecture. The civil engineer has to calculate, and that is where the rubber hits the road. Key to design is you must know how to manufacture. New manufacturing processes always run in tandem with new product introduction, right? So expertise, the Lean Six Sigma, design for excellence, DFX, design for test, design for manufacturability, connected supply chain. Perhaps there's an AI spin to it because automation is there. You can put AI. Monitor the horizon and make the jump because you yourself will know where you are in terms of an S-curve. All of us at 168 hours a week, sorry. How many of us spend your time in the future horizon? Have you invested in yourself, explore AI? So the horizon is actually a very good way of guiding you to where things are. So explore innovative approach to adopt Industry 4.0. I think I shared one is actually adopt a mentor, a supplier program. You need to identify what are the value propositions rather than pockets of excellence here and there, right? It's piecemeal. You learn from Kentucky and all the fast food chain. Combo meal, right? So that you can hit the impact straight away. And last but not least, get serious, take action, master the science and skills of innovation, practice it into habits and lifestyle, and that's the way forward, right? So with this, I think I would like to quote this from the late Steve Jobs: innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. So have a great conference, and thank you so much for your kind attention. If you need references and all those, they're actually here, right? So with this, I'll give back to the moderator for Q&A. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Ko.
Yes.
Hi, Lipe from School of Computer Sciences at USM.
Right.
Yeah. May I ask questions?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Regarding your one of your slides that talks about the 6I, the 6I process. Yeah. So I would like to ask questions. If an organization is having lots of idea and we have some difficulty to consolidate the ideas and also what to focus, do you think that 6I methodology is going to help that organization to do the consolidations or to implement a particular ideas and so on?
Very good questions, right? What you have is actually a methodology, right? The 6I actually profile the innovators into 6 different buckets. So you can actually become a very good, identifier, which means that you're always curious, or you can be an investigator. You always, very critical and put on a critical thinking hat. The answer is yes, but I think, to be honest with you, Malaysia organization, from my experience, never lacks of ideas. Right? It's more along the lines of implementing the ideas, right? So this is where, when it comes to implementation, you need to invest either time, resources, money, and all those to get the ideas implemented to become the innovative product that you want to sell, right? So that journey itself, it takes leadership. That's why in one of the 6I profile, you actually have an investor. If you don't have an investor, your idea will just fall into the valley of death, right? So those are the things. The answer, the short answer is yes. You know, you can actually Google that from that particular QR code, right? You can take it more from there. Right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Ko. Thanks for your sharing.
Welcome.
Hi, morning, Dr. Ko. It's Dr. Wong here.
Yeah.
So I have a question here. I mean, I'm amazed by your presentations and with all the informations. I am always puzzled with, I mean, we all know about the importance of innovation, right? So, I mean, from large firms to all the small firms, and we have been talking about this innovation for decades. So now, but we know this is what we lack of in Malaysia, being innovative, having innovations, even organizational innovations as well as product innovation. So from your experience, what in fact are the most important barrier to you know, for us to move forward? Is that because we lack of an environment where we allow people to experiment and to fail, or is that because of all the institutional barriers, or what are the most important factors that you yourself have been identified, I mean, for not having innovation enough in Malaysia for all these years?
To be honest with you, your question is very valid, and in fact, these are the very complex issues that we are trying to resolve. First, to me, is more along the skill sets of the people, right? An example, you got abundance of fake and versus facts information, right? I'm sure that how do you as a person know which is right and wrong, right? So this is where if you are a PhD researchers and all those, you probably will know you do literature research and then you need to figure it out. So that is on the personal level. And personnel need to know what is innovation. You know, sometimes they confuse creativity, invention, innovation, and then makes everything out. The second one is actually in most organizations there is no common language to link them together, because every time you hear people say about the word innovation, what do they mean by that, right? So those are the things, because we throw the word innovation all over the place, but we don't really know what it is, right? So that is where another thing. Also, more importantly, let's say, for example, today we are talking about Industry 4.0. So if you want to do industrial Internet of Things, you have to learn that technology, right? So learning is more on capacity building. But after that, you need to add on top of it. You need to go beyond that. That is where innovation comes about. So we always stop short at that particular level, and we never move beyond that curve. So last but not least, the very key ingredient is leadership. If the leader of the organization, leader of the institution or organization, and so on and so forth, does not believe in innovation, you can forget about all these activities. You can just leave the environment, because it's not going to happen. I hope I answer you. I think in the interest of time, you can email me. I can actually share more with you, because that's where it's very frustrating to see a lot of money being spent, right? Malaysian government actually invested a lot, but I think all our product and project actually falls into the valley of death, or majority of them. I wouldn't say all. Yeah, I should correct myself.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ko. I think it answers your questions. Since we are behind the schedule, we need to proceed to the keynote speaker 2, Associate Professor Wong Chin Yong, with the title of Digitization and Automations for a New Wave of Business Globalizations. Okay, we may proceed with the presentation. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So let me share my PowerPoint. All right. Good morning. Thank you for invitations to be here with all of you. And I was actually amazed and with the Dr. Ko's presentations. I was supposed to take that time to prepare my speech, but I just totally being dragged into all the stories being told throughout the presentations by Dr. Go. So here, I'm an economist, so I'm not really kind of practitioner in the sense that whatever I presented could be and will be very different from Dr. Ko's. Mine is more like a bird views on what has been happening in the technology and the geographical and the trade landscape in Malaysia, as well as in East Asia, in the world generally. All right, so I have changed a little bit my title when I prepared my presentation, so to make it with a broader scopes of presentation. So technology, geography, and trade, what's next? So I'm a Dr. Wong, Associate Professor in the University of Tunku Abdul Rahman, Utah, and also the Distinguished Visiting Professor in University of Sanya in China. All right, so we have been going through multiple waves of globalization. So the latest one, you could call it globalization 2.0, started when we have this tearing down of the tariff, when we have the evolutions because of the changes in the global landscape in what we call the trade frictions between Japan and China in the mid-1980s. You know, that globalization 2.0 was also facilitated by the ICT revolutions in the since the late 1980s throughout the whole 1990s. I mean, we have a lot of all different kind of innovations, again, from global organizational innovations to technological innovations. So all these innovations typically are the one that promote trade, that change the geography, or what they call the landscape of trade in the world. So if we try to look at the globalization that we have been going through, that Malaysia has been participating. So it probably could be traced back to the Plaza Accord in the mid-1986. Well, we have been doing a lot of industrialization since we gained independence, but the industrialization that we know, where we see a lot of all these electronicals manufacturing capacity in Malaysia, probably could really be traced back to the mid-1980s when you have that trade frictions between Japan and the United States, which led to the appreciations of the yen. And that was a time when you observe a massive relocation of manufacturing facilities to the Southeast Asia, particularly in Malaysia. And even though that Plaza Accord was part of the reasons why we enter our first recession since the independence, but that also probably, I would say, one of the catalysts that have made Malaysians industrialization took off. So with that, and then if you remember that throughout the whole 1990s, we start to talk about this ICT revolution. We start to have ICQ, and then we start to have internet. We start to do search, and then all because of the cost of communications across different regions have been falling dramatically due to this ICT revolution, coupled with the reductions of these tariff across borders. So that basically contributed or led to the kind of globalization in trade, in manufacturing that we observe today. You can call it global value chains, GVCs, you can call it production sharing, you can call it production fragmentations, but that's what we have been observing. All right, and that kind of globalization of trade, which involve not just the rich countries, not just the advanced economies, but the Asian economies and Southeast Asian economies in particular, have reached another milestones when China entered WTO in November 2001. So since then the whole geography, the gravity of international trade has been reorganized with that center around China. And that basically has brought the whole Asia, into that GVCs, and with the graph that I have been showing here, illustrates the merchandise trade as a share of GDP, and you could observe that because this is a trade as a ratio of GDP, and whenever you observe that increase in the line, so that basically indicates that the speed of trade, the growth in trade, has been outpaced the growth in GDP multiple times, because GDP, it's a value-added concept, right? Whereas the exports is a gross value concept. So when you can observe that, so whenever you have a trade, and it always the trade in the since mid 1990s, the so-called the formation of the GVC. So that trade cross borders for every product that we produce, it would involve multiple cross borders trade. So that was the kind of a golden era of manufacturing. All right. So that was what kind of the world that we know. And whenever we talk about global trade, international trade, or the GVCs that we have known today, so that was basically taken upon the what we call the comparative cost advantages. Like, because you have a multiple chains of productions for a single product, and different chains of productions will require a different skill intensity. So they could range from knowledge intensive to capital intensive, all the way to labor intensive. And because different countries will have different cost advantages, some labor abundant countries will definitely tend to have labor cost advantage, whereas more advanced economies with stronger knowledge capacity would tend to have, will be specialized in knowledge intensive chains of production. So because of these different skills and factor intensity across countries, so that basically allowed the spread of the chains of productions across countries within the region in Asia, for example. And that's when the whole GVCs could be formed. And with that ICT revolutions, right, with that technical innovations, that basically reduce dramatically the communication costs across countries. So that allows the formation of GVC, the kind of international trade that we observe today. So that all the international trade that we realize, that we understand, therefore it was basically rooted or based on these comparative cost advantages. All right, you look at the case, for example, in this data which I extracted from the ADB key indicators. So by the time when before China entered WTO in 2000, for example, the share of trade between China and Asia, intra-Asia, as well as with the countries outside of Asia, so they were more or less proportional. But throughout the years of globalization, right, and come to 2018, for example, before the onset of trade war, so the trade of China with the extra Asia, with the advanced economies, particularly the Europe and the United States, it was much more larger than the trade with Asian countries itself. So, and we know why, because Chinese, or China, as the gravity of this whole GVC, so they basically absorbed parts and components from countries in this region, and then being assembled, being processed, and therefore it will be exported to the rest of the world, particularly the United States. So that's how this GVC was formed throughout the past 2 decades. All right, and again, the GVC that we understand today will have China and United States as the core anchors. Right, you have the China again as the gravity of the whole productions, but the United States basically as the end users, the ultimate consumer markets. Right, and even though China was the main story in the past globalization of trade enabled by the ICT revolutions, but that basically benefits many other low-income countries as well. All right, if you look at, for example, these are all the data about the exports, the share of exports to high-income countries as a percentage of total merchandise exports, then you could observe that that percentage has been falling dramatically since the mid-1990s, which means a lot of exports are in fact going to middle-income countries, low-income countries. All right. So in other words, we basically have a lot of developing countries being having participation, being part of this GVC all over the world. So that was the world that we used to know, but that was exactly the world that sowed the seeds of retreat. Let's take this statistics. All right. This again tells about illustrates the merchandise of trade as a share of GDP. So it basically reached its peak before the global financial crisis, right? And since then, it never goes back to where it's supposed to be. All right. By the time when we have this global financial crisis in 2000 2009, when the global trade retreated, then people would tend to believe that this is because of the impact of the global financial crisis, and give us 2 more years, then the global trade will recover to where it's supposed to be before the GFC. But after more than a decade of GFC, the global trade just didn't go back to where it was before the GFC. All right. And again, you remember that this merchandise trade as a percentage of GDP being a value added, which is the difference between the productions and the imported content, whereas trade as a gross value. So you have a ratio being stagnant for more than a decade. So that basically tells you a fact that the growth in the trade, being exports or imports, have been lagging behind the expansions in the GDP all over the world. So then that starts to raise the questions. Has the globalization that benefited so many countries in the past reached its what do you call the end of this globalization? Is that we are going to observe a reversal of globalization or deglobalization? All right. And of course, throughout these decades of globalization, it invited many problems. The problems include the widening income gap between countries. We have the global income inequality as well as income inequality within the advanced economies, right? That led to the rise of what we call populism that we observe, that resulted in the Brexit, the having Donald Trump, for example, as the president of the United States. So the world has changed since then. And not to speak what happened in the past 2 years when you have, let me see if there's problems. Okay, not to speak what happened since the September of 2018, right? When you have the second round of the tariff war between the United States and the China. So if you look at these two diagrams, the left panel, for example, it shows the volumes of trade between the United States and the China from US perspective. I'm looking at the data extracted from St. Louis Freight database. The blue line tells about the US export to China, whereas the orange line tells about the US import from China. So you observe that huge increase, rapid increase in the volume of trade before 2018, all right? So then you see a huge drop, basically a plunge, particularly the imports of US from China. So that drop will happen even before the COVID-19. So there's kind of a U curve. If we believe that again the China and the United States as the co-anchor of the globalization in the past decades, so that U-turn, that reversal of a trade relationship between the US and China, therefore raised new thinking about do we have new kind of globalization, right? So that was the background. So, and of course, IR 4.0 or Industrial Revolution 4.0 that we're going to observe, the fourth industrial revolutions will probably opening a new chapter for the trade and what we call geography. Geography here, I meant the involvement of countries in the whole global value chains. So it could be very different. Let me point out these 4 points. and the kind of technologies that we have today could probably change the way that we do business globally, and the kind of impact will have on trade and the geography. For example, in the past decade, for example, people start to talk about reshoring. So that, of course, was enabled by the inventions or the robotic technology, where even the advanced economies, those are supposed to have comparative labor cost disadvantage. That's why they have to fragment their production chains into the low-income countries. Probably will have a chance to reshore their production line back. There are countries when you can have robots or you can have robotic arms to replace humans. Even if there's not reshoring, but you probably start to talk about next shoring, for example. You try to bring your whole global value chains closer to your end consumer market. So that thought is amplified by the COVID-19, because of the COVID-19, and you basically have a breakdowns in the whole GVCs. So in the past, people form GVCs to seek efficiency. But it seems like when you have overstretching GVCs, it tend to be very fragile to external shocks. So people think of shortening that GVCs, that global value chains. So that's part of the technology that could change the way that we think about trade. Instead of extending GVCs, which we still talk about it probably a year or 2 years ago, and how Malaysia can be participating in this GVC, but now we talk about the reversal of GVC, shortening of this GVC. Internet of Things, for example, when it allows remote production control and maintenance, when it allows the flow of information, when you have in IoTs selling even machines, for example, equipments, for example, is no longer about selling products, but it's about the servitization of the whole process. Then it start to change the way we view this merchandise trade. Digitization, for example, it enables what we call the telemigrants, the book in Richard Baldwin, Globotics. In the past, international trade is all about goods and services. You have firms invested in other countries, produce there, and therefore exports goods, for example, from China back to the United States. So, of course, the workers in the United States, those low-income, low-skill white men, for example, they face competitions with those low-price, cheap products from China. But that competitions was at the product level. So the white collars in the United States, or the what they call the low income, the white men, the blue collars may lose the income because of they lose the competitions in the head-to-head product competition. But digitization basically allows head-to-head competition directly in the labor market, in job markets. When, for example, skill labels in Asia, we can just, for example, present ourselves in Upworks.com, and therefore offering our skills and our services through there, and directly take over the jobs, particularly in the professional service jobs for example, in the United States. So that was enabled by digitization, right? So the what I call the globalization may shift from competition in trade, in goods and services, to competition in jobs market. And when you talk about like the fourth one, the machine learning, for example, and machine learning allows deep learning, all right? So that when you gather this big data, so that basically and through the big data that enables deep learning, so that reduces cost predictions in terms of your sourcing of the materials, predictions about the demand of your customers, predictions about what's going on, in your markets. So that kind of routine job, which basically supposed to be done by human being, could be done by machine. So that, of course, will lead to a different skills for human activities, where we probably need more ability in judgment, with the prediction done by the machine learnings, but somehow you need people to interpret, you need people to judge or what actions to be taken so that we can have a preferred outcome. So that kind of skill sets, instead of doing repeating routine work, from being analytical and being able to do judgment, so that will completely redefine what kind of labels, what kind of workers we need in the market. So let me go to the last two slides of my short presentations. So this IL 4.0 not only define the kind of trade that we have in the future, and therefore redefined what kind of countries will be involved in this global trade. It basically changed a lot of things that we used to believe. Like, for example, this GVC could become shorter. It could be defragmented, all right, around the end user market, because we used to believe that globalization of trade means fragmentation. You have all these production chains being fragmented all over the world, and therefore all these countries will be connected tightly. But what we're going to observe in the next decade, that GVCs could be shorter, and therefore it could be, instead of involving many countries, but it could be centered around the major end user market. All right. In other words, the trade intensity of productions will be falling. And because of the trade and FDI were tightly connected in the past, because FDI in the past tend to be what we call efficiency seeking FDI. You know, they go to other countries to invest and therefore to seek the cost advantage. But when you have a shorter GVC in the future, then the landscape of the FDI could be restructured. For example, it could be less global but more regional. And they are more regional, tend to involve fewer countries. And I say separated by time zone because when we know that work can be done remotely. For example, the one in Singapore could serve whole Southeast Asian market, even the East Asian markets, because we are at the same time zone. So you don't need that much office anymore, even in this region. You probably need different offices, one in Asia, for example, another one in Western Hemisphere with 12 or with 7-8 hours times difference, because that will, because when you have that kind of time difference, it's very difficult when you come to coordinations. But in other words, I'm trying to say is that the way the FDI, when they decide where to invest, will be different from what we used to know 10 or 20 years ago. And the decision for FDI, when they want to relocate their, what they call their production base, capital or labor costs tend to be important for efficiency seeking FDI. All right, as I mentioned just now, under all these GVCs formation, then FDIs tend to split productions based on whether it's knowledge intensive, or whether it is wage, what they call the labor intensive. That's how they decide where to set up their production locations. But that could not be the thing in the next decade. You know, when the whole idea of productions become more knowledge intensive, it become more R&D intensive, become more innovation intensive. It is the intangible capability that matters when you're trying to attract FDI. It is no longer, for example, if you have that strong robotic technology in the countries, high labor cost is no longer a barrier. All right, so it is the intangible capabilities that define the geography of the landscape of the FDI, and it defines which countries could be and will be able to attract FDI. And geographical barriers such as the borders or language barrier were getting more penetrable, because when you have all the technology to do translations, language is no longer a barrier. So that makes task trade even more likely. Again, we used to talk about goods trade, trade in goods and services, trade in financial assets. But in the future, it could be very much trade in tasks, right? Offering tasks to different countries. So yeah, we are going to observe a lot of the trade in that kind in the future. Let me go to my last slides. I believe that another what I call features of trade in the future would be, we're going to see a lot of servitization of almost everything. Like I mentioned earlier, even machines and equipment trade, which used to be trade in goods, merchandise trade, can now be bundled with data analytics services. All right, by the time when you have embedded deep learning into that, machines and equipment, for example. So the information that you can gather that helps to do predictions that connect the productions with the source, for example, with the consumer and the end consumer, for example. So all these informations gathered could be another business which the suppliers of machines and equipments could be offering to the buyers of the machines and equipment. So everything could very much be servicetized. And the last one, because this is what I mentioned earlier, when you have machine learning being embedded in almost every chains of business activities, predictions become much more cheaper for activities. And therefore, we are going to see a lot of talents with judgmental capability, which I totally agree with what Dr. Ko mentioned earlier. We need a different kind of, we need our graduates, for example, we need our job markets, the labels with completely different kind of skill sets, where doing routine work is no longer sufficient, but they need the ability, more ability in analytical and judgmental capability. So that's, I will end my presentation here. So thank you for your time. So let me stop the sharing. I will take questions from there.
Thank you so much, Associate Professor Wong Chin Yong, for the presentation and sharing of keynote of digitization and automation for a new wave of business globalization. We will now proceed with the third keynote speaker, Dr. Mazlan Abbas, to give keynote speech on Industry Revolution 4.0 Embrace or Risk Become Obsolete.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and very good morning. Okay, all of you can see the slides, right? Okay. All right. So the topic about IR 4.0, we cannot run away from one of the biggest topic of the technology is the Internet of Things. And as the third keynote speaker, sometimes you are left in the dark, not knowing whether the previous two keynote speakers have been, talking on the same points or on the same slides that you have prepared much earlier. But fortunately, all my slides will be something quite new to compared to the previous speakers. But anyway, you know that the father of IoT is Kevin Ashton because he coined the word and the term Internet of Things since 1999. And that was many, many years ago, I think 21 years ago. But somehow in Malaysia, you will see that the term IoT is only being picked up quite how many years? Normally, if you want to understand when exactly is a certain country try to embark on this new journey, they will start the citizens that will start to Google, and if you take a look at the Google Trends, then you open up Google Trends and you take a look at how Malaysia, in fact, when they Google the word IoT, that was sometimes in 2014, and that's the time when the term has been gradually increased up to today. And the term Internet or Industrial Revolution 4.0 or Industry 4.0 it started in 2018. That was exactly when we launched the Industry Forward, if you remember, the end of 2018. That was a day, and it keeps on increasing. But you got to understand, Kevin Ashton coined that term in 1999, and where are we now in 2020, right? So we are just 6 years trying to understand and try to grasp this technology. And WEF, the World Economic Forum, have coined the Industrial Revolution in 2014, something, during that particular year. So it was a little bit late. The reason why we should embark on this journey is because a lot of organizations feel that if they don't invent themselves, they're going to be obsolete. Because Boston Consulting, for example, they have take a look at the last 50 years ago, only 90% of the company are still in existence today. And if we want to survive in this 21st century, we must reinvent ourselves. Technologies have emerged, new ones have emerged, and it's going to converge. And what we're seeing, there's a lot of exciting new technologies that we haven't heard of, and only recently that been picked up. And it's going to create new businesses that are going to disrupt us. So I think we know that traditionally we have been using analog way of capturing our photos, and now it's all in digital form. The things that we have listened today, if now all everything's in either in Spotify, the things that we have viewed, traditionally on a VHF cassette recorder is now all in YouTube, Netflix, and iFlix. So everything is all in digital form. And because of this, you see the convergence of media, the audio, the text, the audio, the video, all together in media form have been converged, and the technology themselves is also converged. So there's a very difficult blurring lines when we mention about technology convergence. At one time, we have different ministries. Remember when we have Ministry of Telecommunications for telephony, we have Ministry of Broadcasting for TV and radio. But when it converged, then the ministry have to converge too. So that's the reason, the more reason that you'll see new technologies that comes in really disrupt the whole, the way that we do things. And this is because of the ripples of technologies. And I love this kind of ripples of technologies because the moment these ripples of technology combine, it becomes a bigger wave. And that wave is become the tsunami. And if you don't take, beware about these new technologies that becoming so huge, we're going to be drowned. So take a look at internet, what the internet have transformed. Remember the days when we have all the internets on the fixed desktop version of internet. And now it has moved towards mobile internet, and everything that in your pocket now can have internet access. Everything now in your hands is where you can get your knowledge. But now we are seeing that all the things that can be connected can become the Internet of Things. And it has really, really transformed the way that we do things and the way that we communicate. But take a step back if some of you might not understand about the real components of Internet of Things, because sometimes people have abused the term IoT. They put everything under the gambit of Internet of Things. So Internet of Things have four main components. The first component is all about sensors and actuators. The things that you have, humans have 5 sensors, they become digitized into digital information. You can have a proximity accelerator, gyrometer, GPS, camera, mic. It all are the digital sensors. And then you need the second part, which is the connectivity. It can be on fixed network or wireless network. It can be as close as your body area network, NFC, RFC. It can be like Bluetooth. It can be Wi-Fi. It can go beyond like 4G, 5G. Now even can use satellite for that matter. And the third main component is where you need to aggregate all your sensors information into a place where you can easily expose the data to the developers. So this is what we call the middleware, the one that sits between the hardware components, which have different connectivities, to the software part, where you allow software application developers to extract the data out and create their own application, which is the 4 components. And you have analytics to do that, to derive the insights of the data. So you can create your new workflow, your applications, and so on and so forth. So I give an example like smartphone is an IT device. Waze is an application. GPS in the phone is one of the sensors. Application Waze is the application themselves. But of course, all data that sends from the Waze from your phone sends to Waze middleware. Okay. And how many connected devices now we have? So they have predicted that 20 billion devices are going to be connected by 2020. And of course, if you take a look at one person, the number of devices, for example, smartphones, go beyond than 8 billion people around the world. So even like us, it's not only one connected devices. We might have several devices. We have even a smartwatch. I have a blood pressure machine, which is IoT device. I have a mic. I have a speaker that is also an IoT device. I have a light that is also IoT device in my house. On top of that, my weighing machine is also an IoT device, which can collect all my data since 2014. And you can see that there is this device called Foci, device that you can put a belt. It will measure your breathing pattern. It has an AI, artificial intelligence. It collects the data and tell you the rhythm, whether you're focusing on your work or not. So that is some of the IoT device that one person have. So if you multiply by 8 devices, by 8 billion people, you might even have 64 billion devices around. Okay, let's take a look at industrial revolution. Hello. Okay, Dr. Ko, I mentioned earlier that Industry 4.0 and Industrial Revolution 4.0 are not equal, and we have mentioned many times that the industry forward, which Malaysia have launched earlier, is meant for smart manufacturing. It's one of the sectors which is very important in the fourth industrial revolution. But we should not forget that industrial revolution also happened in different sectors. So you will see that in the healthcare industry, in the education, in the financial system, in the agriculture. So every sectors will be impacted by this industrial revolution. And we do hope that Malaysia in future, we will see that it's not only a one framework that we are looking at on smart manufacturing. We wish to have other framework for other verticals too. But I would like to share with you the question of where are we in the industrial revolution, Malaysia, for example. But to understand that, let us take a look at how we live in this era. Okay, so if you are living in the era of 1.0, you are actually using manual and physical tools, using your hand and some physical tools. If you're living in 2.0, this is where you know that electrical have been introduced. So that's the era of 2.0. The moment you are using electronics, internet, database, you are not now in the era of 3.0. But when you are using technologies, which we have mentioned much earlier just now, everything that comprise of intelligence, robotics, drones, blockchain, IoT, big data analytics, 3D printing. So a lot of these technologies actually have intelligence in it, augmented reality, artificial intelligence. So this is related to, if you're using these technologies, you are now in the era of 4.0. So the question is, where are we now, right? So in Malaysia, what they have launched in Industry Forward, these are the enabling technologies, 9+2, I would say. And of course, if you look at different sectors, they might have different priorities. Yeah? You take a look at construction, for example, they might be looking beyond than 10 pillars of technology. They might even have this building information system, prefabrication, different advanced building materials. So they have different technology of pillars that combine to become the construction 4.0. So the question is, again, which industrial revolution are we in now? So in education, for example, if our education system is still using the normal whiteboard, blackboard thing, that's 1.0. If you are still using an overhead projector with transparency, you are using 2.0. At least if using a PC projector online learning, then you are 3.0. In the era of 4.0 is when we are using augmented reality and virtual reality. Remember when Dato' Wei mentioned earlier in the opening speech, we want to have avatar and looking at virtual reality, and we are looking each other avatar during the conference like that. That is 4.0. And what do you think about our conference today? Which era are we in? So if the era is still using internet as the way for us to have conference, webinar, something like this, we are still in 3.0, right? And that's our challenge today. And we know that in the early, before we start even our conference, there's still glitches in the technology itself. So to go beyond the 3.0 education, we have a lot of more challenges to resolve. In the shopping part, in the shopping area, in 1.0, we use physical cash and the buku 35 lah, when you want to remember things that you owe and you loan. And 2.0, you use a cash register, maybe a calculator to calculate the way you return money. 3.0, you use credit card. And 4.0 is when you use e-wallet or your smartwatch to pay. So that's the era that we are moving towards. And most likely, most of this usage of this technology have been used in urban areas. But we got to understand that it's not only us in the urban area that have all of this. We see the challenges that we're facing everywhere in the urban and the rural areas. So where are we now? We are still at 2.7. This is, I think, almost the same what the IR and the industry forward readiness assessment that made. I'm not mistaken, is 2.75. You correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so but this we have made much earlier in guessing with several industries players. So we are always worried that the technologies that we are using now will replace all our jobs. Of course, some will be replaced. Things that you remember, you can remember a lot of things, then robot will remember for you. Things that need accuracy, machines can do that. Things that really very repetitive, things that work with strength, things that very routine job. So all of these machines and technologies will actually either complement us or maybe sometimes it will replace us. So what exactly, if we feel that there are challenges and we also feel that there are also opportunities for us to move forward, what are exactly the barriers of moving towards IR 4.0? So the first one is actually having that clear vision, identifying the business issues. That's what lacking. That's what we are facing now. Sometimes we don't have enough talent that comprise of all the new technologies, because while we are facing these new technologies, universities are churning out new graduates which have these new talents. We want to have that champion that can break all barriers, because working in technologies like this, it goes across many divisions, especially when you're bigger companies, then you have bigger challenges to break that silos of data that remain in different places. But last one is all about mindset transformation. That's the most critical part, because this is always, whenever we have events like this, we will love to see people to have that mindset transformation, saying that, yes, we want to do this. Yes, we want to transform. So how do you do that? Because sometimes we want to do a mindset transformation. People are scared to move because they feel very comfortable. Taking that the first bungee jumping, you are scared to take that particular jump, the first jump. But what you need is actually a little push. That push is needed to make that particular jump. And this is what a lot of consultants have been doing, that scaring you guys. Secondly, we also don't want ourselves to sleep too long. We want to have that wake-up call. And see what happened to the current situation. Who actually made that wake-up call? Is that COVID-19. The COVID-19 is the one that gives us that wake-up call. We know that once the value chain has been broken, the way that we communicate no longer going to be very physical. You have to find new ways of doing things. This is where telecommunication is one of the core infrastructure required to help you in making that communications but much more easier. So why it is now at the very inflection stage, because Kevin Ashton have been talking that since 1999, but it's only picking up now. It's because that hardware is becoming very cheap. Connectivity is very pervasive. Everywhere you go, you can get connectivity. The software part is much easier for you to develop. drag and drop sort of thing. You can see the Moore's law, the powerful, the number of transistors double every 2 years. The Metcalfe's network effects, everything is connected. So these are some of the key growth factors. When it's combined, the IoT become the inflection point. Why we require IoT is quite simple. If you want to start your journey in IoT, the first thing you need to question yourself is what are the things that you want to monitor. If the things is, this is the assets. If the assets is the food, you have to maintain and find whether the quality of the goods is maintained. If safety is your main concern, who is the intruder? You need to put your camera. If the consumption of electricity is important, the asset is consumption of electricity. You need to some way to find way to monitor your electricity. The same thing. If your health is your headset, you need to have a smart wearable watch that can monitor your health assets. So on and so forth. So there are many things that you can do. The question is, ask yourself whether what is the most important asset that you want to monitor. So because of that, the moment you get your sensors, your devices or assets to be connected, you can, or products that have sensors, it becomes the customer's, the manufacturer's dream, because once sensors have been connected, these people will know that, what kind of features that can be used by, what are the most frequent features that the customer use, where exactly this product that you have launched much earlier is being used for how long, how frequent it is, why the customer use product, and how the customer use your product, because it has sensors with that. So in IoT implementation too, they have different phases. So the journey takes you 4 phases. The first one is all about monitoring. Then you control, second part. The third part you optimize, and the fourth part is autonomous. Monitoring, for example, in any vertical of applications of IoT, you can implement the first part. It's the easiest one, is monitoring. In car, you have to do vehicle tracking. You put a GPS, you can track your car. Control, when someone steals your car, you can do some immobilize. You can have actuators to lock or to stop the engine. When we have more sensors within the car, you can optimize by understanding the battery, the wear and tear of the car, optimize the engine. The moment you have all the sensors can be connected and talk to each other, the car, and also the rest of the infrastructure, it becomes autonomous. So it has its eyes. So whenever there is new services, new technologies have been matured, a lot of business also going to be disrupted. Uber have disrupted the way that we do transportation. Everyone can become a taxi driver, right? So once the taxis become driverless, no one can become a taxi driver. So that disrupts another business situation again. But what if, okay, before that, the levels of autonomous car also have different challenges. If you take a look, there are 5 levels of automation, autonomous car. Up level 2 is partial automation. The human takes over the machine. The moment you leave the control to the machines, is under the 3, 4, and 5th. The 5th level of automation, autonomous car, is when there is no steering, even in the car. At the 4th level of automation, you have at least a steering, but the car can drive by itself. If you want to, there's some problems, you can take over the car by handling the steering. But what if, I give a question, what if now we are in the 5th level, full automation, and there is no way you can control the car and the car drives by itself. So this is the challenge when there's still a lot of research to do when you want to embed ethics inside the car. So what is the car's decision, for example, when there is no way for the car to stop? So there's something happened to the car, it's either turn to the right, to the left, or go straight. So in the situation where you turn to the right, you will might hit the children, and children will, 1 or 2 children will die, or you go to the left and you hit a group of old men or ladies, and some of them will die, or you go straight and you become a hero, you will die because you hit the wall. So what is the choice of the car? Because you are not the one that's going to handle the car. So once you embed that ethics inside the car, it will have its own decision to make. So this is a question that's still under research. I will not go delve into details, but because of the time, so I'll just move forward. So this is something that you have to ponder. Now, the question is, what happened when the taxi flies, right? So again, it disrupts the whole business model. This has been done in Dubai and the taxi fly. So that's the reason why we have this pilot trial. It needs to be done in every country for every new service that some things that you don't know what to do, you need to have this pilot trial. There are 4 reasons. The first one, because we want to understand the technology maturity. How mature is the technology? Is it sufficient for you to, is it very robust? Is it very reliable? Is it already, the battery of the flying taxi can last you longer so that you can arrive to your destination? So that is a question, technology maturity. The market adoption, how people see that they can adopt and embrace the technology or the products or the services. When the ladies try to stop an autonomous car, when there's no driver, will the lady take the taxi? So that's the question. So market adoption. The third thing is the business model. It's no longer that you pay by per product basis, by rental, maybe by outcome based. So there are different business models need to be taken care of. But the fourth part is where a lot of things need to be done too. Because, for example, autonomous car. When the autonomous car, you need to have a new policy. The different transportation, Ministry of Transportation needs to take a look at their old act, because now the car is no longer have any driver. Is it a car? Is it what? You know, when the car is flying, is traveling over the, a flying taxi, what do you consider? So it's Ministry of Transport, Aviation, and all that have to come in place. So they need to take a look at, and the lawyers have to really look back at the act. Okay. So this is the reason why I think we have heard the latest announcement by the government mentioned the National Technology and Innovation Sandbox. So Futurized Center is the one that's going to be the test bed for us to test out new technologies. So you will see the robots, you see the robot autonomous car, you'll see drones sending parcels. So how do you send parcels over the air? You know, so these are the things that you need to take a look at. So there are also 4 levels of value pyramid. So in terms of data, once you start your journey in developing your IoT services, you will generate a lot of data that comes in many places, many areas. Data that comes in many forms, in variety of data, in the kinds of velocity and volume, and the kind of uncertainty, veracity. So you need to make sure that that's why the big data technology comes in. The data alone, the bits and the bytes, will not make a lot of meaning unless you can change the data and answer the question of who, what, where, and when. That's information. The question that can answer the questions of how become knowledge. And when it becomes appreciation of why, it becomes understanding. So the higher it goes into the value pyramid, people will pay more because you can answer that main question. So the data that's been generated also poses a lot of challenges to us because it can become personal. The data that generates from your data, your sensors, your smartphones, your own devices, or the data that comes very private. The company who implement IoT solutions, they make it private, but the one that wants to make it public is the government, because you have paid your tax. You want to make it open also. And because some data provider says, I want to make it commercial. If you want my data, I can sell it. I can sell the data. That is something which is commercial data service provider. So smart parking, I guess that any applications that you can build, you can ask these questions first until the point that you answer the questions of why. From there, you will understand what kind of services, what kind of sensors need to be deployed. Either it's time-based sensors, location sensors, identification sensors, temperature, humidity, whatever sensors, that is the information that you will gather to derive your insights and make the proper decisions. Because a lot of times people just implement, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt your presentation, but there is something interrupting your visual presentation. This is a webinar invitation, so maybe you can close. close
Which part I have I miss it?
the screen. On the screen, there's some invitation. The webinar Smart Grid Initiative.
I stop first.
Okay, maybe you can reshare your slides.
Can you see?
It's still there. It's still there.
Can you see this?
Yes, your slide is there, but the notification is still on your slide. So
Notification.
yes.
This one.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay. Sorry, I might miss the some slides. But anyway, how do I go back? Okay. Can you see this? Okay, right? Right. So what I'm saying now is that sources of data comes from many places. But the best part of building an IoT solutions when you have different sources of data that comes in from different verticals, different database, different agencies. And then you can blend the data and you open up the data so you allow other application developers to create their own application or services, because that can create a better, more experiential kind of services that go across different. For example, smart city applications, you can come from home, waste, and health. What applications that you can create from these three different verticals? So with that, for example, like us, I think Dr. Ko, thanks for Dr. Ko for mentioning Fabric. We are one of the horizontal players where we allow people to come in on board and start their IoT journey to make it much easier for them to create applications. So because we ourselves can create our own, but we can't do everything. So we open up the whole ecosystem to allow other people to create their own applications. You can connect whatever sensors that you have, regardless of whether it's a RESTful protocol, MQTT, co-app, and then you send the data to the cloud, to the middleware, where it stores there, very well secured, and there's certain business logic, and you can create a notification, you can connect to a notification engine. When certain threshold happens, it will send an alert to your applications. Or you can extract the data, you can have your own dashboard or workflow. So it's quite simple. The reason is meant for developers to create the application easily instead of taking months, take weeks, from weeks to days. So it has a lot of tutorials for you to come in on board quickly and build up your own application. So we have source codes for you to share and some videos. So we have a lot of applications developers around the world, 3,000 of them, and more than 100 countries have been using this. But of course, we want more of the users that come from Malaysia too to build their talent, because we need more talent in closing that particular gap. So for the last few couple of slides, what I just would like to mention to you is that this is the problem that we are facing now for a lot of for a lot of new technology entrepreneur. We also facing that chasm. We build new things, but sometimes innovation stops there because there's no market traction. So that chasm is also very challenging for a lot of startup entrepreneurs. Okay, the moment you can cross the chasm, you will get the early majority who will be able to buy the solutions and go to the market. But the moment you are already on board the early majority, technology become matured again. And if you are late in adopting this new technology, you have become the laggards. And the moment you become the laggards, new technology will come in. That's where the S-curve come in. Someone will take it over and create new services. Okay. So this is how we start. If you want to start your IR 4.0 journey or IoT journey, the main thing is start small. You can think big, but you can start small, focus on certain solution that really make an impact to your services. Once you do that, you get the buy-in, you get the traction, then you can start to do integration with your current system to the back-end system or the existing system of the company whatever company that you're building in. Once you do integration, then you can think the way that you can innovate. You can create new workflows, new business models, a better way of analytics. And then from there, you can start your iteration again and create a new application. So with that, I would like to thank you very much. You can join our favorite IT community by just scanning this, and you can come on board to be one of the IR 4.0 community for Malaysia. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much, Dr. Mazlan Abbas, for the presentation, sharing of keynote of Industry Revolution 4.0 embrace or risk become obsolete. I would like to open the platform to anyone who wants to ask the question to our speakers.
I'm Hui. Can I ask? Can I ask question? I'm Hui from USM.
Sure.
I would like to address the questions to Dr. Mazlan. I have two questions, one to Dr. Wong and the other one to Dr. Mazlan.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Mazlan, in view of the list of challenges that you have highlighted in a few of the technology, including like what you shown just now, the CHASM chart. So ultimately, a small country like Malaysia, we wouldn't have the market to test out, a lot of new products in economic of scale. So ultimately, the global solutions will be covered by mostly advanced countries, which has the market. So in view of this, how much can Malaysia talents actually contribute to deliver these the solutions to some of these issues that you've highlighted?
Okay, so that's your first question. I will say the first one, or you?
Yeah, it's the only one. I have another one for Dr. Wong.
Okay, you're right. I think this is the biggest challenges of any entrepreneur or startups in Malaysia, because the market that we're having in Malaysia is very small as compared to the one that other countries is. So I think the first step that we need to look at is, first, since we are small, make sure that our target market when we build the solutions is a very big market. Even a big market in a small Malaysian market is still small. So let's take a look. When we started off our journey, we also think that healthcare is one of the big market. We also work on travel and tourism. So travel and tourism is a very huge market, right? So the main challenge now is facing travel and tourism because of the COVID-19. So it become haywire, so slightly because of that. But I think what the government, we have been talking with the government and encouraging them that before we even go beyond the shores of Malaysia, we should be actually be using our technology and products ourselves. And this is the main challenges. So that's why I think the new grants that the government is pushing now, I can see that things going to be resolved. Because like, for example, like the NTIS that I mentioned earlier, the sandbox that you can use to do a trial will be what do you call that, a testimonial for you to go beyond the shores of Malaysia. The moment you have that, you can easily go to countries which is nearby. The nearby will be Indonesia, because we have similar cultural and environment. So that is one of the largest market. I think we don't have to go anywhere if we can enter Indonesia. At the rest of the countries, we can go slowly. But again, I think still Malaysia, we need to push for us to become a profession instead of just consumer. Buy first technology which is Malaysian based, then we can encourage our people to go out. Okay.
Thank you. I have another questions to Dr. Wong, the second speaker. My question is, Dr. Wong, in view of your concern on the new criteria in these globalizations or the reshoring activities by most of the MNC now, how do you see the positions of Malaysia in the global supply chain the next 5 years? And then another question is, how would Industry 4.0 in Malaysia help to maintain the competitive advantage as compared to our rival like Thailand and Indonesia, or even Vietnam? Yeah, Dr. Wong.
Thing is not unmute his okay.
That's right. That's right. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Mazlan. Responding to your first question, which means that the way that the policymaker, the government, see how to attract, or when they come to setting the policy to attract the FDI would be very different. We used to believe that, we have that, for example, labor cost advantage in, for example, attracting the FDI to come here. Or then we used to believe that, okay, we have that good infrastructure, we have kind of a good educated labor force to attract FDI to set up the base here. But then you start to realize that that kind of advantages that we used to have in terms of educated populations, in terms of infrastructure, have been everywhere. Even in other Southeast Asian countries, the late catching up countries. So that was no longer the criteria that we're supposed to think of, when set up policy. That also means when we come to, we really have to increase our, to make our game better. Like what I mentioned just now earlier and others, because, when you talk about all this intelligence, whether it's machine intelligence, artificial intelligence, remote intelligence, they all need different kind of skill sets, which I believe that many workers in Malaysia, many even graduates in Malaysia, lack of. For example, if we look at the job openings in Malaysia in the past five years, more than 80% of job openings in Malaysia, they still belongs to what we call low-skill routine jobs. Those are elementary occupations, basic occupations. So that's, the consequence when we don't have sufficient, skilled labor force for that market, which means we'll never be able to form that market. If you don't have that market, you can't attract really FDI to come in or to position Malaysia, in this new era. So that involved not just about your FDI policy, that involved your technology policy, that involved your education policy. So that's, I believe that the government needs to do in the next 5 to 10 years to rethink how the policy is supposed to be made. It's no longer, if we talk about silos thinking and management, where we try to make decision, like we compartmentalize decision. And that's if we identify that's a barrier for a company to innovate, that will be the problems as well that block us from, the whole nations from being innovative. We have to stop compartmentalize our policy makings, where we're gonna make from educations to, as I said, commercial to technology policies to be in one package in order to position ourselves. And for example, particularly related to attracting FDI to come to Malaysia. So that would be your first question. Second question is, I think one of the main problems in firms, for example, Malaysia, how to position ourselves. It's like the question I asked Dr. Koh earlier, because we lack of innovative activities in Malaysia, particularly the small and medium enterprises. We know we have 98.5%, about 99% of Malaysian firms, they are SME. And out of all these SME, more than 75% they are micro, meaning with 5 employees and below. So being small, that means you probably can only serve local markets, which means you don't have profit margin to go for innovations activities, because those are very expensive stuff, and it takes time. It doesn't allow you to fail if you're being small, because being small, if you fail, means you lose everything. So that's, and we have reports, for example, released 2 years ago in 2018, published by KRI, raising a fact that majority of SMEs, they are not well connected with the MNC in terms of the production linkage. So that basically limits again the spillover of all these technological benefits, even to the larger medium enterprises. So I believe the way to move forward in the future, and particularly related questions, how to position ourselves, it really have to go back to all these small enterprises that we have today. So are they ready to really tap the technology that we have today? You know, for them, it means digital technology. So I always see this COVID-19 as what I call a threat to the economy as well as an opportunity for our business establishment in Malaysia to really rethink of their strategy, not just in terms of having digital marketing, but on how to rethink their overall organizational structure, digitize the organizational structure, make the organizational structure more agile to whatever happened in the market. So that require what Dr. Mazlan mentioned in the last slides as well about the mindset innovations, you know, how to revamp your mindset to deal with, you cannot use analog thinking to deal with digital market. So that's what I will respond, how I respond to your questions. Dr. Mazlan, your turn. That she's on the mic then.
Oh.
Okay, sorry. Okay. I would like to add what Dr. Wong mentioned, and I would like to stress this because this may be a good way to convey this message about the producer nation. Why I think it's like chicken and egg. We are trying to blame that when we have these graduates, when they go out, they cannot go to any company because sometimes the company also doesn't have any requirement of that kind of skills. The reason most likely is that because a lot of companies in Malaysia becoming like a trading company. You know, we are consumer based. We buy things from outside or we just sell things from outside too. So, but if we have a lot of companies which is local tech provider, which we buy our solutions from the local technology provider, this local technology provider will survive and also continuously enhance their product by creating their own roadmap. The moment they have roadmaps like this, they need R&D people. The kind of R&D skills need to be generated being generated by the universities. The universities will create these people who have that kind of skills to help the local techs. So that chicken and egg issue will be resolved. So how we resolve this is by supporting the companies to become a producer nation, because then we can create jobs that require this kind of skills. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Is there any more questions from the audience and participants? We will open the question for the keynote speaker 1, keynote speaker 2, and 3.
Maybe I can drop another questions to the first speaker.
Sure, thank you.
Dr. Kaur, right? Yeah. You mentioned about innovations at the firm level. You might have some approach to do that, and I believe a lot of Malaysian firm has delivered a lot of innovations, whether successful or unsuccessful. My question is, do we created a science of that kind of knowledge? Meaning, do we have a depository center or what, maybe by MPC, in studying how does innovation evolve at firm level, for example, in the industry, in the manufacturing, let's say, so that the experience can be shared in the future by the others? I mean, would this kind of depository center, if it exists, will help for the SMEs?
Okay, thank you for the question, right? Can you hear me, right? Okay, so I can't see properly whether you can hear me or not, but anyway, I'm going to say this. Innovation is actually a tricky thing, right? Because if you work on really real innovation, you keep things to yourself, right? Because this is actually meant to be a competitive advantage.
Correct.
So one of the reasons why many organizations, before you launch a product, you patent it, you protect your IP, and then you sell it. So when you sell it, that's it. No competitor can see what you have, right? So your question about the repository, the answer is not that I know of, but I think it may be good for you to look into this ASM publication, right? ASM has done many of this. I'm sure that you can see my slide now. So a lot of time, the pace setter, the adapters, imitators, laggards, these are all there, right? This is actually coming from their sharing. So all this time, despite what we want to say about us, actually, we just don't have a process to do that. We are just by chance hitting, sometimes hits, sometimes don't hit. Like, you have Grab, which is hit very successfully. Then out from 1 or 2 hits, right, from experience, you get 98% of them fail, right, which never get mentioned. So the other thing that we do, Dr. Maslan mentioned this as well. Malaysia has been a consumer. We actually use the technology, but we don't do that. If you look at this, right, this is actually, again, the report. On the higher level, it looks very good, our index. But when it comes to the bottom of the iceberg, which nobody wants to talk about, right? So it's actually along the lines of, we are very poor, right? So in terms of in terms of participation in global supply chain, 53, product innovation, we are 130 out of 37. And these are the things that is telltale to tell you that we as a nation, after 62 years of independence, we are still trapped in the middle income trap. Good job. That's not a problem because, you can have a lot of multinational providing jobs for people, but things is changing now because the thing is that what is our value proposition in Malaysia? If you think about low cheap labor costs, other countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and all those, they have the same offering. So we need to really innovate, and earlier on, I did share with you that particular slides of the horizon thinking. And this is the thing that we do. I'm actually going into consulting now, right? So what I'm trying to get at here is that, sometimes you look at here, right? Patents, a lot of researchers here like to do patents, right? Patents, even on the mousetrap, there are 40,000 of them, more than that, right? If you look at the search. But out from the mousetrap patents, these are the things that makes it invention. Out from that, you know that innovation is the one, the two that I listed here. These are the one you can buy in the market. The rest of the patents, it's just there. So another thing that we as a workforce, we need to be able to see what are there's a wealth of information now. I mean, you can see a lot of information is coming to you. But the thing is that how do you tell which is fake and which is real? We need to amplify in Dr. Maslan terms, right? The ripple, right? So it's like a lot of signals. I use the word signals to noise ratio because all these signals are right in front of us. Whether you are a researcher, whether you are a technopreneur, it's right in front of us. How do we aggregate these weak signals and improve the signal to noise, right? And eventually do that. Because a lot of fake things. And that's one reason why, if you look at this, go and scan the QR code. You see this again, Barack Obama, president, he's giving a speech, but it's not real. And it is AI, right? AI is able to get a video now. Now that if you get a video, you also don't know what is real or what is not real, right? So this is the thing, you will look at this. You as a person now, our next generation, how are they going to do this? How are they going to articulate what is right, what is not right, right? So this is, again, go back to earlier on, there was a question asked as well. I actually have this horizon thinking. Horizon 1 is innovation. It's your existing business. And usually in innovation, through the innovation lens, we call it the Horizon 1. This is innovating for profitability. Start with this because this is where you're innovating for profit, which means at lower cost, right? Cheaper product and all those. And this, you can actually loosely put it in a Six Sigma, Lean, and all those business process reengineering. These are something new that you can try. And this is quite safe. 70% of them, you seldom fail in this type of innovation, right? So the other one is innovating for growth. That's where your strategic standpoint. If you want to move into AI and all those, the Horizon 2 is where you're innovating for growth, your organization. Because when people move the curve, right, move to the next S-curve, if you stay in existing horizon, then you are actually dunk, right? No matter how big you are as an organization. Then the Horizon 3, which is 10% of the investment, if you're thinking along the line of you have 100% of your resources, your money, your time, how do you invest it wisely? So perhaps to you, Horizon 3 AI is very far away. It's okay. You do Horizon 3 for the sake of learning. You do Horizon 2 for the sake of growth. You do Horizon 1 for profitability and survival. And many SME falls into this Horizon 1. And that's one reason why I purposely showed that particular slides about the one country, right, or one industry, two worlds. You can see this is where we are on the right-hand side. If we want to make a difference in that, the government has to spend more time on the SME side. That is what my take is, because you will look at the right-hand side, people call order, right? You want to buy a materials using telephone. Hey, can you send me that label now? It's not going to be all these digital things that you talk about in Oracle and all those. And that is where our SME is. And if we don't help them, there is nothing else for Malaysia to be proud of, except we are actually a good provider of workforce, right? Talented workforce in the key technology area of IoT, AI, and all those to be supplied to the multinationals. That's all I have. Hopefully, it can make an impact and inspire more Malaysian, innovation to come out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. Any more questions?
I think from the feedback from the three speakers are quite consistent. It leads to an impression that Malaysia is in not only middle income trap, but also a middle technology trap. We are not the technology creator, nor the bottom of the technology change. So how do we remain to be competitive the next 5 to 10 years? That is worrisome. And seems that from the three speakers' feedback, I can sense that our government is not doing enough to position our talents workforce. Can you agree on this?
I think to be honest with you, right, the government has done a lot, and they have done a lot. But the thing is that it's not cohesive. It's not concerted. It's like you do something here and something here, then it's not cohesive and you don't achieve the maximum impact. That's the reason why I was just jokingly put down that one, right, to seed the discussion, where why don't we just start with all multinational operating in Malaysia, just adopt 2% of their supplier to make them Industry 4.0 or similar to what the MNC operating level is, right? So by doing that, the local first tier supplier, and then we go to the second tier, third tier, level 2, level 3. And subsequently, those guys who are still continue to use Excel spreadsheet and all those can eventually go on board. But because it's a tightly knitted value chain, the value proposition is there. The purpose of why you're doing it is there. The purpose of doing the robotic process automation is there. So it's cohesive. And then once you see this, there's actually impact to it. Rather than we run hackathons here, we do these innovation activities here, there, because you're spending money all over the place, but I still achieve the outcome of innovation theater. Because, we know that until today, you still go to London and watch Phantom of the Opera. Innovation theater, the theater still have a place to be. But the thing is that, what do we really want if we want to move Malaysia up the middle income trap? So you ask that questions. How many of the Malaysian company, like electronics, for example, actually Malaysian owned, where we can have like Vitrox, we have Lutronics. Is that all? Right? So 60 over years, we actually have only 2 or 3. But this is where we have a lot of multinationals. And you compare Taiwan has no multinationals. They have their own their own Taiwanese company that conquer the world. So we have to put on a different thinking head, different mindset, and promote technopreneurial. I think this is actually creating jobs rather than seeking for jobs.
I also like to add further, Dr. Koh, thank you very much. One of the main reasons, I think, for us even to jump to that IR 4.0, we got to understand that we need to have that internet, right? We need to have that digitalization. even before digitalization, we also need digitization of our content. And we see that, like what Dr. Ko mentioned about, having that telephone call, making that order, is all manual things, and it is still in analog form. So digitization is the first step, then digitalization of the process, having that internet access, because what we see now is when COVID-19 happened, we see the real truth of our communication infrastructure, how far that we have gone through in terms of providing that enough speed for us to move forward. So why, then we can see that weakness factor in the internet. We mentioned that, we have all this kind of speed, but in fact, even when we have webinar like this, certain areas doesn't have the internet speed sufficient for video conferencing. So we need to bridge that gap first, and then also we need to have that value-added services for us to move forward new applications, right?
Yeah. I'd like to talk two more points here. I mean, those are of course very consistent with what we all have agreed on. Number one, I guess we talk too much in the past when we try to, when we talk about development, try to getting out of the middle income trap. We pay too much focus on attracting this and that FDI, but we forget the fact that what matters are our own companies, right? And particularly those SME. For again, a very simple reason: when we have more than 2/3 of Malaysians working in SME, and out of all those SME, when we have more than 2/3, they are all micro enterprises. They're small one with 5 employees and below, and even a lot they are sole proprietors. They are the bosses at the same time they are the employees. Being that small, you know that at the same time they are the major source of employment in Malaysia. Then you know that to make Malaysian companies as well as Malaysian people to be able to, catch up with whatever happening in the world in terms of technology, we need to pay focus to them. So they're supposed to be the focus in the policy making in the future. So that's number one. And number two, with all this digital stuff or technological stuff, I believe that on top of doing digital, for example, being digital, it's particularly even more important. And being digital means it doesn't just mean digitization, it means digitalization. Being digital in terms not just about the technology, but in terms of organizational structure, the way we think about how do we approach the market, how do we deal with employees. So that I believe will be another important part, to address in the future.
Yeah, I think very well put it, because the first thing to progress is to really know what we have and understand very truly of what we really are, right? So knowing where we are, knowing how much we have progressed, what are the gaps, I think that is the key. So also the focus should not be just, now I know that we have been doing a lot of FDI, so the employment is good, but I think we have to think beyond that, because right now the value proposition seems to be changed overnight by COVID-19, right?
Thank you, Doctor. I think that's the wrap. We wrap the session now. Thank you so much, Dr. Ko, Dr. Wong, and Dr. Mazlan for a very good discussion. And with that, we will end our opening ceremony. We sincerely hope that you'll enjoy this 2 days conference. We will meet again for the track session at 2 o'clock. It is a splitting tracks. Please refer to the agenda given prior to this conference. With that, we end this session. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.